kind of like prioritizing real conversation over just self-promotion. One of the things on Fishbowl is the ability to post in a more discreet manner or a more anonymous manner in some cases, where everyone that signs up for Fishbowl is verified. So, we verify your title, where you work, who you are, but we let you post just as maybe a verified creative director or a verified employee at BBDO, to simply just let you ask a question and not feel afraid. What we've realized is that, when you're on social media, even on Instagram, there's this kind of like self-censorship of always posting the best version of yourself, which might not be the real self. So yeah, on Fishbowl, we let you post in a way that just lets you feel comfortable talking to people. And so Fishbowl, we actually, Leah, we actually launched to the consulting community first. A lot of industries always think that they were one of the first ones. And actually, probably a good year before advertising. But at this point, yeah, it's grown across many different industries. Today, we have just launched the healthcare professionals to be able to connect professionals that are in really great need for a community. Both Matt, my co-founder, and myself, our wives, are actually working in hospitals in New York City, very much on the front lines, and we've seen the need for community there. So yeah, I think we can move on to just some high-level metrics. It's at this point, we've been more US-centric, but we are seeing a lot of quick growth in Canada as well. We have about 40% of the US ad agency professionals on the platform. And a lot of people think, okay, it's new social platform, it's just for young 20-somethings. It's actually quite diverse. We have a lot of mid-career professionals as well as senior leadership on the platform. And it is, they use it like an Instagram where they're checking in a few times a day. And let's see, and then here, just briefly what it looks like if you're not on it. You join different communities, which is on the left, and then people. Here is an example on the right of what a post might look like. So people are asking questions, and people are being able to respond in a real way. So yeah, our focus really is to create greater understanding amongst professionals and within industries and companies. And so we think the way to do that is by letting people feel comfortable speaking with others that are peers, that are professional peers. All right, so I'll pause there and just see if anyone has any questions, or if this was maybe different or aligned with what you thought Fishbowl was or might be. Always happy to take questions as well. All right. Maybe it sounds, it's aligned. So one question that I have for kind of everyone listening in then, before diving into trends, is during what's going on right now, I understand a lot of you are kind of the talent leads and leading people at a lot of agencies. What are some of the trends or worries or things that everyone is seeing across their own employee bases? I'd be curious to hear some of the things that you all are seeing kind of on the front, or like, chatting directly with your employees versus what we're seeing kind of in aggregate. I thought I'd ask.
All right, I'll go. Hi, it's Jeff. What I'm seeing, and we do these, so we do weeklies with the whole group. It's about 250 people. I run one in Thompson. And aside from the obvious, job security questions, there is a trend towards questions that I think are coming to me because I'm a grown-up and most of them are in their 20s. And they're questions like, how long do you think this thing is going to go on for? I'm like, who the hell am I to tell you that? Like, how would I know any more than the news would tell you, right? But it's like, and I think my insight to it, or my thought is, it's a bunch of, most of our employees are, under 35, frankly, and they're at home by themselves in apartments looking for adults to guide them, right? Yeah. And I just think it's just a real human thing that's happening. But I thought that was really odd, and then I thought it was really lovely. But I also see it over and over again, and so I'm wondering, are others experiencing this, or is this just me being middle-aged dad guy. I don't know, but I'm feeling it. So I don't know if that's a trend you're seeing.
No, thanks. It's actually one that we haven't listed and we'll get into, but it's something that we're actually working directly with a lot of other employers on. And yeah, we'll get into that. But I think, as you were saying, people are seeking guidance, and they're trying to figure out where can they get that guidance from. But yeah, definitely we'll dive into that a bit. Thanks for actually bringing that up. Any other things that are a bit different that other people are seeing, or the same? Anyone wants to chime in?
I had one, I guess, somewhat similar, but we find Mondays really tough with the teams. Like we have check-ins every morning with them, and it just seems the energy and the mood is really low on Mondays, coming out of a weekend where everything sort of blurs together. So that seems to be, especially, Jeff alluded to some of the younger ones on the team. It's their first time through something like this. It's all of our first time through something like this, but we've been through a financial crisis and 9/11 and things like that before. So it was kind of know the way through it a bit, but a lot of them, it's their first time. So
totally.
they're struggling. And then with being at home, just the whole blurring of weekend to work week is tough, challenging.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, if others have questions, or feel free to message Lee or drop them in the chat. So what we're going to go through now is going to be, we're first going to talk about general trends that we've seen kind of pre-COVID, and then also we're going to dive into some trends that now we're seeing as the pandemic has gone on. So Maria, if you want to talk about, I think that this was from January, right? Is what we were, kind of some of this data?
Yes. Yeah. So in general on Fishbowl, the people talk about mental health, work-life balance, and advertising. Those are their main issues. And compensation is across the board, across all our industries. People are here to also learn to level up in their careers, find solace and connect with others, feel validated. But yes, they're crowdsourcing solutions to what they're going through. And it's interesting to realize that a lot of people are not necessarily looking for solutions only. Just feeling heard is really important. And that's also the advice that we share with other agency partners who are like, oh, there's these issues going on, people are talking, and it's like, just listen. Actually, they just want to feel like their voices are being heard. And in a bit, we'll share some best practices of when that happens. We also compared it to the women in advertising community. It's always interesting to see how these different identity groups, how the conversations evolve. For women in advertising, they talk a lot about motherhood and leave. I think that's where they feel the safest to ask all these questions. And also talk about the lack of support at work. And it's not necessarily the big things that have an impact. Yes, there's been Me Too, there's, let's pay women fairly, but also there's a lot of small things that just sort of chip away at their motivation, microaggressions, feeling gaslit. So it's also interesting to see the top keywords that resurface within that community. And you hear people are saying, it's hard, I feel bad, I need advice. So it's interesting to understand how people feel, so that we can find solutions together to make them feel better at work.
Thanks. And so let's see. So okay, yeah, you can go ahead with this. So this is again some of the trends or some of the learnings we had to kind of up until January, even pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, so we hear a lot about retention, talent retention, and obviously there are more opportunities to find different pathways for your career. It's not just ad agencies. So I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the US, a lot of advertising talent gets lost to startups or brands. People go in-house, and we've been around for a while. So 15 years ago, going in-house was not cool at all. It was like you're being a sellout. But now it's become very attractive. And so, I think there's a lot of conversations on, okay, why is that happening and how do we stop that? But if you actually look at the general feeling, 65% of advertisers are suffering from job burnout at their current company. 50% of advertisers feel their workplace culture negatively impacts their mental health. And other things, 62% of advertisers are happy with their compensation. That's not just like a small part of the fuller picture. But when you add everything together, then it becomes clear, like maybe that's why 60% of advertisers are interested in going brand side, because I think a lot of it, if you go back to the first conversation trends around work-life balance and mental health, maybe going brand side, there are other issues like, oh, it's repetitive. You feel like there's like a big factory of just this one brand. But there's something that works with them in general. It's work-life balance is pretty well respected. So yeah, those are trends overall that we've seen with the advertising community.
Totally. And so now kind of like going into some of the trends that we've seen just really over this past month. If you go to the next slide, Mara, kind of a lot of what I think some of you were talking about and is not too surprising. And also, just as a caveat, we're kind of just looking at this and observing data. And so, it's really up to us when we, chat with partners how to take action on it. But what we're just trying to do right now is also show you, kind of get a pulse on what the industry and professionals are talking about and feeling. And so, as expected, a huge increase in people talking about working from home. Overtime was a really commonly associated keyword with working from home as well, though. And so I think, one of the things from a conversation standpoint are people trying to navigate this, but also very much that it relates to that work-life balance, but in a bit more of an explicit way, where we've seen people talking about how they feel like they're actually working more. And, I think it's probably different per agency, per company, but that's something that I think we've definitely seen a huge uptick in. People, as expected to, are just concerned about, if you think about it from like a Maslow hierarchy of needs standpoint, like they just want to make sure that they're feeling safe first. And initially, we saw a big uptick in this when many companies and agencies were still considering, should we do work from home or not? And so that was a huge discussion about some employees were thinking, okay, my employer doesn't have my best interest, in mind in some ways, or others might. But that discussion around, will I get sick? What's going on right now with COVID-19? Just really their focus on health was something that was being discussed. And I think we've seen that dissipate a bit. It's still obviously a top topic, but that was when we saw the greatest increase, when I think many employers were figuring out what to do. Interestingly too, just beyond the parenting communities on the platform, we've seen a huge increase in people talking about kids. And for anyone here with kids, or maybe everyone does, it's no surprise, but connecting it with work from home, it's just this whole new reality of what professionals are trying to go through right now, where they're working from home, but are they working alongside their kid? Are they doing remote learning? Are they having to help set their kids up with that? Are they somehow trying to find health, like daycare, maybe if they have partners in healthcare where that's still being provided? There's, it's a really kind of, it's a topic that's stuck out a lot. And then obviously layoffs as well, where everyone's just kind of concerned about, again, from a Maslow hierarchy of needs standpoint, that's what we see during these crises. It's like, okay, am I healthy? Do I have a job? And a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, are they going to have a job for how long? What's really going to happen? And Jeff, I think to your point, the people are looking for guidance. And so I think that's kind of reading between the lines, where we're looking at a lot of this. We're seeing people, there's uncertainty, and when there's uncertainty, people are searching for answers to their questions. And so a lot of times they don't know where to ask questions. It might be a sensitive question. That's why a lot of times they do come to Fishbowl, because they're thinking, okay, there's a community of peers where I can at least get an answer. Maybe it's not the most accurate answer, and we are working with, we have ways to try to highlight the most accurate answers now. I'm working with employers on that, but they are seeking guidance. And that's one of the really big things that we've seen. And we did a few other polls, if you want to go to the next slide, Mara, about some things that were kind of top of mind. So, you know, this was just something, when we see topics, like when people are talking about cancellation of projects or things like that, we have polls that kind of pop up to really start to quantify this. So, you know, the fact that we saw so many people talking about canceling projects, I think, you know, that's related to some of the layoffs and things that are top of mind. The bottom right, you know, again, being able to manage my workload while taking care of my children. And so advertising across all of our industries, 2/3 had the highest, where people said that they have not been able to manage their workload. And again, this could go, this is where, you know, all of you that are, you know, working directly with the employees have better insight. Some hypotheses, you know, are this is connected with that, you know, work from home and maybe burnout and overtime. A lot of these keywords might be associated, but we do know that 2/3 of advertisers right now feel like they can't manage it, especially when they have kids at home. And the Mondays, it's, I mean, look, I think everyone kind of working from home right now, getting the week started is difficult, but specifically for advertising, so I think this is across the board, but in the bottom left, what is the biggest obstacle you face in a remote work environment? And for advertising, it was actually 39% answered less synergy with coworkers. And I think, you know, the kicking off the Mondays or getting everyone in sync is something that for advertising, that actually was highlighted as even a bigger obstacle for them working in that in that industry. So these are some of the things that we've been seeing over the past, you know, 4 to 6 weeks. You know, we're going to continue to be kind of doing these pulse checks. So this is some of the insights that we wanted to share with you so far. I'll pause there to see if people have any questions or comments. Maybe some of these things were obvious. Maybe some things painted the context slightly differently.
Do you have any more insights around the obstacle, less synergy with coworkers? Because I think everyone's trying to do all they can in terms of video conferences and check-ins.
Yeah.
But it's in terms of what's driving that, because we feel like, you know, we're trying to do all that we can. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Is it the wrong type of thing? Is it too work focused and not enough social focused? So any further thoughts there would be great.
Oh yeah, so this is, again, I'm not an expert, I'm just seeing I'm just observing what we see. We haven't done an analysis more on kind of like what keywords are associated when they talk about obstacles or synergy. We do run these polls, so actually if you or anyone else on the call has questions that I think are really top of mind as people leaders, we would love to kind of learn from that, because, you know, we're always happy to run polls to help better inform some of the partners that we work with. So to answer your question, we'd probably have to dive a bit more into some of the specific posts. Might be able to you know, look at that after and share some links with you. But also, if you or anyone has any ideas of questions they'd like to ask, we'd be happy to run some that might align with the community.
You know, maybe just a follow-up to say that what would make it better if you wanted to follow up this poll with one in terms of what would they want to see?
Right. So the way
to improve synergy.
Just a technical thing. Right now, we don't have a free response as an option for our polls.
Oh, okay.
But if, let's say, honestly, if you know the things that you're trying, and anyone else here on this call wants to provide, like, you know, 3 to 5 multiple choice options, happy to run that.
Also, it's something that we lead community conversations of all sorts, and these are types of things that could be really useful to the community. So I'd be happy to consider sharing that.
Yeah. So sometimes we'll kind of have a prompt of a question, so less of a quantified poll, but yeah, it becomes an organic conversation. So that's a great idea, Mara. Cool. All right. Well, if yeah, we can always come back to this towards the end. But if you want to kind of move on.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to add something just overall, even since the beginning of the coronavirus and how behavior has changed a little bit a few weeks later. In the beginning, clearly there was like a shock and acclimate phase where people were just talking about, you know, this new phase in life. But now the conversations have evolved towards more helpful and supportive solutions. And people have been sharing a lot of resources or tips, you know, like share your workout videos, share your recipes, or even just lighthearted things like, oh, share a picture of your dog, of your garden, or, you know, what are you cooking right now? And it's so it's nice to see sort of like the community starting to be a bit more uplifted. And even just in terms of jobs and resources, they're sharing lists of job opportunities. So yeah, I think we're on the rise of something more positive. And I think, you know, your question on what could make it better, this will be in line with what we're trying to do and what they would love to see.
Yeah, totally. Actually, on the jobs front, just letting everyone know, during this time, we're just trying to help a lot of the community, and we've been planning on rolling out job listings on Fishbowl for a little while. That's something we're going to actually be rolling out actually in the next several weeks, and it's going to be entirely free for employers right now to post jobs if they are hiring, because we're just trying to help a lot of the community discover jobs. So right now, as we're launching, it's just entirely free. If you have any job listings that you'd like to have on Fishbowl, you can just get in touch with us, and we'll be able to have our team host that as well.
And final note on parents, because I think it's a really important one. That we've been seeing conversations of parents, you know, beyond not handling effectively their workload, it also borderlines into accidents. When both parents are on conf calls all day, and they don't watch their kids for 2 minutes, and suddenly they swallow marbles, and then they need to go to the hospital. So we've seen also productive conversations where certain agencies have shared sort of an all-agency email telling their employees to be mindful of parents and booking them all day because they can't always be there. So I thought that was interesting to share too.
Hey, Loren and Mara, I just have a quick question in terms of the obstacles. Did anyone speak to the fact that, you know, there's clear differences between the, you know, socioeconomic differences between employees and maybe their managers? You know, I definitely don't have a office myself working from home, whereas I know, you know, other people have, you know, houses, they have lawns, they have like these big places where they can go where, you know, unfortunately I have to stay in an apartment. I'm with my partner and we're on top of each other. Was there any kind of conversation or insight into, you know, the circumstances that people might be living with?
Yeah, so I know we've seen conversations actually around that. And you know what? I think honestly, that was something that popped up more there were conversations around that with students in our teacher community. That was actually a real big topic about students having that. But I don't think we actually have quantified that, although we've seen conversations around that within the professional communities. Or Mara, I don't know if there's anything top of mind that you've seen as well.
No.
I know it is a topic that's come up, but I don't know if we've seen it I don't think we've quantified it to a great degree right now.
No, but I think it's a really interesting topic. So anything that you bring up right now, it's really helpful for us to come up with community conversations that raise awareness of these issues. So thank you for that.
Yeah, totally. We have seen people talking about, I know, like lack of equipment or kind of best equipment. And I know within the consulting communities, there's a lot of, I know some of there are giant employers that are supporting them. And I think we've seen, I think it's a little different than from some of the agencies and what they're able to provide from the support standpoint too.
Great.
Hi,
So,
it's Judy Lewis here. I just wanted to comment on that because I think it's a really, really important point. And within our agency, we have taken extra care of those individuals who are living alone, and particularly in our Toronto downtown condos, because you can't even go outside a condo without contacting, you know, an elevator or surroundings. So I think as employers, it becomes super important to pay attention to that. I also think in the work from home area, you know, it's wonderful that men are so much more active in looking after their children, but reality is that caregiving still resides mostly with women, and therefore we've seen a real difference of, you know, the view of working from home is wonderful if you don't have children, and it's wonderful if you're not responsible for caregiving. And I think it is unrealistic for employers to expect, you know, the prime caregiver to work a full workload while also looking after their children, especially when the employers are not paying at all for any child care whatsoever. So I think that that's a big issue. And the whole issue of working from home, you know, there has been research done, and we've been in contact, you know, with officials here in Toronto. The only area of crime that is on the rise is domestic violence. And that is because more and more people are working at home in uncomfortable situations. So again, there are many people who, while work from home is a benefit, and it was always in our organization as a benefit on a reduced scale, now that it is full-time, there are many people that we're hearing from who can't wait to get back to work to be all together. And I think employers have to be sensitive to that.
Judy, that was such a great point. We had a mental health session yesterday. I'm sorry, I'll just jump in with this because I've been holding on this and I can't anymore. But because we've been talking about work from home so much, but a gentleman from CMHA said that actually the work from home acronym is not doing us any favors, because people are staying home to be safe, and that's actually their first job. And if they're able to get some work done while they're there, then that's a bonus. So sometimes, because we are so portable, and especially agencies, we've had for a long time that ability to take our laptop and go home, and I can do that, and isn't that a benefit? That's great. But a lot of thought leaders, and this gentleman who is a workplace mental health professional, was like, we maybe need to switch our perspective a little bit in order to keep our employees safe.
Yeah, these are really great insights. Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. We'd love to create content and on the app for the community to get a pulse on the community for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, so this closes the coronavirus and, you know, the times we live in section. We also wanted to share, if that's interesting to you, a little bit about a Women at Work survey series that we did right before everything happened. So we launched this on March 8th, and then March 9th, it's like, everybody works from home, okay. So we've been wanting to survey how women actually feel in the workplace through a series of surveys and questions that paint a larger picture. You know, we all hear about you know, Me Too and compensation, and I mean, even motherhood has been even more on the rise the past few years. But we also wanted to talk about unconscious bias and what women go through. So we'll go into that in a bit. But what's really interesting is to compare the different industries and how they feel, and sort of who are the best and the worst of all professional services. I mean, overall, advertising is really the most woke industry. So you know, it's been really enlightening to discover conversations and trends in other industries, because I think we take things for granted. We're like, oh, you know, my colleague is like this and my industry is like that. But other industries they're way behind when it comes to how minorities feel in the workplace. So first of all, kudos to advertising for being ahead. And so but there are, different surveys that, they're not super positive. For example, 28% of women in advertising trust that their company will do the right thing in instances of reported harassment. So it's quite low. So that's something, that agencies need to work on to build that trust again. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know about Canada, but I think in the States, there's been so many cases of Me Too cases in the past few years. Motherhood, women in advertising believe that motherhood will negatively impact their career progression. And actually they're not the worst of all the industries. So they're the winners there, but still it's 60%. For compensation, women in advertising are happy. 36% of women in advertising are happy with their compensation. And also we wanted to share just a bit of positivity and just understand if women are willing to recommend their company to a female friend. So 66% of women who work at their agencies would recommend it to a female friend. So that's pretty good. But the survey that I wanted to bring your attention to was on this piece that conversations that we've been noticing on Fishbowl on how women are always told that they're either too aggressive or too agreeable. It's like you can never win. And so we created this survey, and we saw that in advertising, 77% have been given feedback on their personality rather than their performance. And it's just been really enlightening to see the stories behind them. It's if you read on the right, I was told I was not approachable and I don't smile. I don't know, that was part of my job. And somebody else was told, I got told I should be less agreeable, i.e. nod less or make less gestures when someone is speaking. And finally, this one I thought was also interesting. And I'm sharing this because I think it's also, we are in these situations and maybe we do give this feedback ourselves, but it's just to raise awareness of it. So I was recently given feedback that I come across as arrogant and condescending. I was horrified and asked for examples. They couldn't give me any, so I suggested we look at past scenarios, etc. Response to this was that I was being manipulative and cunning to try to make myself look better. And it's not just one person saying that, and it's across all industries. So just you wanted to share what was going on with women, because I'm very passionate about the cause for the marginalized in general. I started this database called Where Are the Boss Ladies, which is the largest database of senior women leaders in advertising. The focus is in the US. And we really care about making sure that the industry attracts diverse talent and retains them. So this is why we wanted to create this survey series. If you have any questions or comments, or even anything that any feedback that could help inform next year's survey series, we're all ears.
Cool. So I guess the next section we wanted to go through were just, I think, some best practices and how people have been engaging on Fishbowl. I guess we can just dive in. One is that certain agencies actually have company bowls, which are more specific or private to people working at a specific company and chatting with their coworkers. Again, there are all types of communities on Fishbowl, and this is one that's company specific. And these are just some of the topics that we've seen that are typically talked about in company bowls versus the broader community bowls, where you can see it is much more maybe transactional, where it's talking about compensation or performance or policies or things going on at specific offices, layoffs as well, talent and retention. And within the agency world, what we've started to do is actually work a bit more hand in hand with agencies that want to have more of a positive impact within the company bowls. The agencies that we have worked with have been able to drive, I'd say, more value by being proactive versus reactive in many ways. That's typically when we work or chat with a lot of other partners. I think that's one line that we always use in general in terms of how to think about how to engage on Fishbowl. And it's to do it in a proactive versus reactive way. And so what does that mean? That means as a leader going in and providing a more accurate answer, going in and being a bit more authentic or honest about what's going on. We have CEOs from many of the largest agencies that will sometimes chime in, to also, people leaders as well. And so, yeah, this is a slide I know that Mara had come up with to try to make it a little simpler. I usually just say that talk to someone like you would talk to a friend is really like the best way to think about it when you engage on Fishbowl. But Mara, I don't know if there are like, certain key areas here from a best practices standpoint you want to highlight.
Yeah, no, I think that, that's the main advice, because, often people are like, well, somebody talked about layoffs, like, what do I say? Well, how would you talk to a friend about it? And that's what people are expecting. They want to be treated like humans, like adults. And I think, what's beautiful about Fishbowl is also the generational differences and learning from each other. And I think, certain generations behave a certain way and expect the other generations to understand their language. But for the younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, they prefer transparency over smoke and mirrors perfection. Actually, they hate that. So it's better to share, okay, this is what happened and we're working through it. And so here's an example that one of the leaders of a company bowl shared, and we sort of changed a little bit of the language, but it's pretty much this. I think sometimes we can be afraid of these big negative news dropping, and then how people will react to it. Somebody asked a question about, well, it seems like no one cares about retaining talent at this agency, and then that person shared it in their own voice. So we're not saying you have to speak that way. It's just like, how would you speak? That person speaks this way. So he said, there is no delicate way of saying that our business got punched in the face in that year. Ultimately, we were owned by a publicly traded company. They dictate that. They explain the part of this, and then they also admit, how business works, and then say that part of the business will always be ugly, but also necessary. So these are just sort of, it's always nice to see an example of how people speak. And then people went nuts in that bowl. They were so happy. They were just like, thank you for speaking up and letting people know their voices are being heard. So important. And you're not providing canned routine responses. Great thread. Good to see someone from the exec team willing to have an open conversation. So this is just advice, in case things that are hard to talk about happen. Just talk like you would to a friend.
And this is how we always advise people to at least communicate on Fishbowl. And sometimes they've even taken this and used it in other channels. One of the things that we can actually now scientifically say is that we worked with Harvard Business School coming through. We have millions of posts and comments, and it's a net benefit when you would admit a flaw versus trying to cover it up. So just saying nothing happened or trying to make it sound like things are going to be okay versus admitting the flaw from a trust and engagement standpoint is actually better. And so that this paper has been written now, and it'll be published in a few different journals later this year. But this is something that we worked with them on, and I think the example that Mara just showed, it feels authentic, it feels real, and I think communication is constantly evolving. And I think what right now we desire in this era is authenticity, but true authenticity more than ever, and that's what we see really builds trust. So that was, and then Mara, maybe you can talk a bit about I know we only just have a few minutes left, maybe the community leaders program.
Oh yeah, and just other things that are happening on Fishbowl that are quite exciting. We recently launched community leaders, and they all lead their own communities or bowls. So for example, the Minorities Marketing Bowl, Women in Advertising, Creatives, and they help provide direction to conversations. Because what's great about Fishbowl is that it's, you can talk about anything you want, but there are also really fascinating discussions that get lost in threads. So we want to be able to highlight them. So that's one of the things they're doing. And if coronavirus hadn't happened, they would be organizing their own events in real life. There's been a thirst of connecting in real life with their communities, but right now we're doing Zoom happy hours for them. And also they're here, they're kind of the people on the ground who are going through, you know, their agency life and giving us feedback that can help move the industry forward. And paired with that, we actually have an advisory board of industry leaders, agency leaders, who are here also to hear the insights from these community leaders. And because they're kind of they can pull the strings, this could have an impact on their agencies. So yeah, so that's one of the things we're excited about. Should we move on to Q&As, Loren?
Yeah, I think we just kind of go through the
just to finish, yeah. And so the part of the events that we also do on Fishbowl are Q&As, where we have subject matter experts or industry leaders or influencers who share their perspective. And what's great is that we give people access to these people so that they can have one-to-one conversations with them.
Yeah, a lot of leaders have talked about this kind of being able to mentor at scale, where it's kind of an efficient way to create a bit more of a personal connection. And it's something that a lot of the professionals on the platform really appreciate too.
So just a question about that, Loren and Mara. So did those mentors just go into their specific company bowl, or is that for anybody to participate in?
Yeah, we set it up both ways. With the company bowls, sometimes we've seen people do it kind of an all hands, and here's an example. Ernst & Young, they have a couple 100,000 people throughout the world. And, you know, for them, they wanted to do something that was, you know, targeted to just their employees. And then other times what we'll do is we'll do it more kind of industry wide, or really whatever the relevant audience is. I think for, and then we're able to also, people can do this organically, but then we do provide some opportunities for us to be able to support with it as well, to make sure, let's say within your company bowl, it's a bit more secure, or just providing best practices, things like that as well. But yeah, so it's done both internally and externally for different reasons.
And then do you tap these folks to be mentors, or do agencies or these mentors put themselves forward to you? So just wondering if agencies on the line, if they wanted to put a mentor forward to participate.
Yeah, it's kind of done both ways. We have formal partnerships with some agencies, and we always like to, you know, work with them, but we've also have more informal partnerships as well. And so it really comes down to benefiting kind of the community. So, you know, if anyone has people that they think would be really helpful and beneficial, we'd always love to chat about that too.
Awesome.
Great. And then, yeah, I guess just the last slide. Yeah, like just, I think one thing that we realized is that a lot of employers don't realize that we do have a way to work with agencies or larger organizations. And so this is just letting everyone know that there is a way to work with us formally. I think initially a lot of people had heard about Fishbowl and weren't sure if we were kind of this rogue third-party app. And our intention is really to create a safe space for professionals to come together, but we always think that that requires presence of the employer in some way. But usually employers already have presence because leaders are on the platform already. But we do have ways, if you know, people want to highlight, make sure that more accurate information is highlighted, having company bowls be a bit more secure, having their employee information stay more up to date, getting some of these insights in a bit more in-depth manner. Those are some of the ways that we can work with employers. I mentioned kind of the hiring and talent acquisition is something we're doing completely free because we just want to benefit the professionals on the platform right now. But yeah, this is something that sometimes we found that actually makes our partners more comfortable knowing that they have the option. But we also love just informal relationships as well, because we're always trying to make the platform better for everyone. I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Who's on mute?
Okay.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm so sorry to I'm all late for all my meetings today. So, but that was amazing. Your deck, I had like about 5 questions, and your deck answered every question for me. So if anyone has any questions, very quickly write it in the chat and let us know, and I will definitely feed those back to Loren and Mara, and we'll get an answer to you as well. There is an email address that you can ask for more information from, but I think for me it is a really important tool that you should have in your basket of tools in engaging with your employees. And it's easy to get on there, and I think you should have some senior people looking at what's being said and really start to engage. Is there a newsletter we can subscribe to get some insights on a routine basis?
We're talking about that internally right now. So we're right now we have kind of our change council that we're sharing it with, and we're figuring out how do we distribute this more broadly.
Okay, so stay tuned for that. And so thank you very much, everybody, for joining our call today. Thank you, Loren. Thank you, Mara. That was really insightful, really amazing trends. And thank you so much for that.
Great. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great Easter weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.